Police Department's mission to change their approach to interactions with the mentally ill. Many of us know someone who struggles with mental illness, but when cops are called into the picture, these encounters can turn deadly. Only 15 to 20% of law enforcement agencies in the country have crisis intervention training programs.
Suicidal, okay. Do you know if she's taken an overdose or anything?
Ernie Stevens says he helped start the one here in San Antonio.
That was the call I hated most, was when you heard that dispatcher call in and say there's an individual at this house that has schizophrenia, that's hearing voices, he's talking about suicide.
According to a survey by the Police Executive Research Forum, new recruits typically spend 60 hours learning to handle a gun, compared to 8 hours learning strategies for handling the mentally ill.
Look at our police academies. How close do they mimic military boot camps? The only difference a lot of the times is you get to go home at the end of the day, but there's still that in your face, that high intensity yelling, training. That's great. But then when you graduate, you go to the streets of my 18-year-old daughter is wanting to kill herself. All of a sudden, we got to calm down.
For Joe, this work is personal. As a Marine Corps veteran, he's battled PTSD.
Very personal question. You ever consider suicide?
I have, absolutely. And more than once, to be honest with you. And so, you know, that's another thing where, you know, I don't shy away from the tough questions, Byron, because, again, I hope that it'll help somebody.
So when you go on these calls, you sometimes see yourself?
A lot of the times I see myself. And that's what allows me to do what I feel like is a good job.
This new approach may be saving lives, and it's certainly saving money for the city of San Antonio, around $50 million in the past 5 years.
Do you feel that she's suicidal?
Their specialized training is put to the test almost daily.
A complainant is calling in asking for a welfare check on his estranged wife. She's a veteran, wounded warrior, and she called him this morning and was crying and told him that she was in a lot of pain. He's unable to get a hold of her for the past hour. He's at her house. He's banging on the door, no answer.
They raced to the scene. We could sense their heart rates rising.
So police, are you okay?
That's the victim's estranged husband who called 911.
Is she breathing?
All they can do now is pace and pray. Ernie and Joe arrived in time.
They had to kick the door in to get inside. They found the woman unconscious.
Maintenance guy, can you coordinate EMS to get him up here? I mean, she's unconscious. She's taking a lot of pills. We found her face down in her bathroom with a lot of pills, empty pill bottles, at least 7. I mean, we tried to do what we could until EMS got here. We do have a faint pulse.
My heart's broken for her. Sad for the family, sad for the husband. You know, and you just wish you could do more.
You can see the emotional toll this takes on the officers, and they do this every day. I was struck by how you guys kicked the door in, having no idea what you might find inside.
Certain officers are going to see us as foolish, you know, because like you said, Byron, we don't know what's on the other side of that door. You're right. Every possible call that police officers get dispatched to has the potential to turn violent. And like I've said, our mindset is always ready to go there if needed.
The woman survived. Ernie and Joe likely saved her life.
I saw 2 cops go in. I saw 2 human beings come out.
Reaction is that, Byron, because of how you see it affect us. There's no way you can do this day in and day out and not have a human approach to this or respond with emotion. I don't think it's possible.
Police officers everywhere are encountering more mental health issues out in the field these days, and how officers handle those situations has really had to change.
Janesville police are among those committing to training to de-escalate a crisis rather than respond with force. Here with us to talk about the topic this morning, Officer Alex Erline with the department's crisis intervention team and Sergeant Michael Blazer. Thank you guys so much for rising and shining. I know it's not a short drive. Sergeant, I want to start with you. We started this conversation via email because of an incident report that you'd sent to us about a successful de-escalation. How often are these things successful and people are just not hearing about them or don't know about them?
Well, that's one of the things that Officer Erline and myself have talked about frequently with our CIT program, is that making the public aware of how often we use these tactics and how often we act with people in mental health crisis is probably one of the biggest things we can do with our program, is be an advocate, not only for the tactics we're using and the communication we're using, but to help bring the seriousness of mental illness and mental health awareness to the public eye so people are aware of what we're dealing with.
Officer, in this training that the sergeant was just talking about, I mean, and there's a lot of kind of real-life scenarios in addition to classroom work that you're learning. So I guess if you can, kind of explain for people, what are you seeing in your training that is helping you out in the field?
Well, we're trying to do what's called scenario-based training, so we provide real-life experience as best as we can in a controlled environment, especially for new recruits, to allow them to see what it's like on the street without having to deal with this the first time ever on the actual street. So we set up a very controlled scenario. It's a surprise to the new recruit, and then we walk them through that as best as they can, let them, you know, stumble on their own, if you want to call it that, and walk them through what the best way to deal with this is through our experience with the extra training that we've gotten as mental health officers.
Has the need for this around Janesville and elsewhere, has it increased, or are we just more aware?
I think it's a, excuse me, I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
You know, once you know what you're looking for, it's easier to spot, sort of thing. But we are seeing definitely an increase in calls for service. With the officers we have on second shift at night, we handle numerous complaints of people in mental health crisis every night. They get fairly involved and take a lot of time. And then to have the patience and the ability to use that tactical pause to help get through that complaint before having to escalate to some use of force.
You just used the word, Sergeant, that kind of was really interesting to me, pause. Because in reality, that's what we're talking about here, because a decision the other way, a split-second decision, could lead to force, right? I mean, that's what this is all about, is de-escalating situations, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that tactical pause is just kind of slowing the pace to our speed, where we can actually employ some different tactics, communication tactics, give the person some time. One of the things we talk about is that vicarious mood. You know, if everybody's ramped up, everybody else is going to get ramped up. So if we can bring that mood down by communicating in a much softer, more calm way to somebody who's already escalated because of a mental health crisis, we can create that pause for them as well so they can think through what's going on right now.